All right, guys. Good evening. It's good to see you. It's good to see you tonight. Hey, give me a shout out tonight. Encourage, engage with one another. Welcome to Five Star Man Champions live stream. I'm your host, Neil Kennedy. I am, I'll just be honest with you, building a hedge of protection around your marriage. This building a hedge around your marriage is not for the faint of heart. You know, the enemy hates marriage, and we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into this series, and I'm going to give you a preview tonight of what we're really going to tackle in this new series. For any of our new participants on the live stream tonight, welcome. My name is Neil Kennedy. I am author, founder of FivestarMan. FivestarMan is a movement to resurrect biblical, authentic manhood. You know, people say all the time there's toxic masculinity. Well, it used to be called sin. Toxic masculinity used to be called sin. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to resurrect authentic manhood. The answer to toxicity, or the answer to the real challenge of our day, is passivity. Where men are not stepping up to be men, is authenticity. And so that's what we're after. Hey, before I get into tonight's teaching, I'm really excited about being in Evangel World Prayer Center in Louisville, Kentucky this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And really excited about it. And I think it's going to be incredible. And I just am. Paul Woods is there, and he's leading the charge, and I think it's going to be awesome. We're also going to be going back to Evangel World Prayer Center in August to have the FivestarMan, the authentic FivestarMan conference, the same type of conference that we had here in Tulsa the beginning of the year. We're going to also have authentic FivestarMan conference in Louisville, Kentucky, in August 18th and 19th. And so I just really want you to put that on your calendar and make plans to come. It's going to be incredible. George Sawyer is going to be speaking. I'm going to be speaking. And so it's just going to be an amazing weekend. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to be pretty direct tonight. The fact of the matter is, you know, what I do is challenging. What we do as men is challenging. Being a man in an anti-man culture is challenging. Being a man who wants to live in biblical marriage in a culture that is so anti-man is challenging. I have dealt with so many men who are struggling because there's several fronts that the enemy is coming against marriage. And I really believe this, that this is probably one of the most challenging teachings that I could dive into, because there are so many different angles that the enemy is coming at men right now, that this one is huge. So let me get started, and bear with me, because I really feel the prompting of the Holy Spirit. This is going to be a flow. But one of the accusations that Satan made against God, now the accusation was actually against God when he made this, that God had built a hedge of protection around Job. And as long as that hedge, that wall of protection was erected, Job and his family members were protected. And so we know the story, even though many people make assumptions about it. One thing is very clear. There is an entity, a spirit being, that is in the role of Satan. And let me just say this. Satan is originally not a proper name. Satan was an occupation. Satan was a position that a being takes. It is it's really the accuser of the brethren. Apparently, one spirit being has so mastered the art of this position that it's become personified, where you and I refer to him as Satan. And it's like if you are so much an expert that you become the person, you become the identification of an occupation. And I mean, that's what Satan is. Satan is a position, an occupation, but he becomes a personality, a person. It's personified to be a person. Are you with me? I know I'm getting into this, but I'm laying some groundwork. So Job is being examined. And in the court of heaven, we know that there's a court. Okay, we know that there's a court in heaven. We know that there are principalities and powers and authorities, and they are given an assignment over the earth. And we know this from Psalm 82. Psalm 82 gives us insight on that. I'm just going to go there. Psalm 82. God presides over heaven's court, and he pronounces judgment on the heavenly beings. And then he begins to, he is holding court, and he's presiding over the court, and he is pronouncing the judgment over the heavenly beings. And they're not doing a good job, and so he gives them a reprimand. How long are you going to make unjust decisions? How long are you going to favor the wicked? Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and the helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. But these oppressors know nothing. They are so ignorant. They wander about in darkness while the whole world is shaken to the core. He goes on to say, I said that you are gods, you are children of the Most High. That means Elohim. But you will die like mere mortals and fall like any other ruler. Rise up, God, and judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. So when we use the term, and follow me on this, guys, because this is gonna help you in your marriage. When we use the term sovereignty, that God is sovereign, what that means is he is King of kings, Lord of lords, God of gods. He is most high. There is none beside him. There is none equal to him. He is one of a kind, and there is no one that can usurp him, even though there are spirit beings that have tried, and they are doing so. Well, so in the court of heaven, the accuser approaches the one who presides over the court and says, I've been covering the earth, and I've run into Job. You put a hedge of protection on him. Here's my accusation against him. So before we jump to assumptions about Job, and I really should just do a whole teaching on this, because there's so many presumptions and assumptions about Job that I've seen people shipwreck their faith because they jump to conclusions that are not meant to be concluded from the book of Job. I've seen young Christians get into the book of Job, and because of their ignorance and not knowing, and I'm not saying their stupidity, they're not stupid, they're just ignorant of the whole counsel of the word, and they jump to conclusions and not knowing how to properly exegete and interpret Job, they jump to conclusions that become disastrous for them. Now, what's important for us at this moment is this. This is what I want to focus on. God has built a hedge, a wall of protection over Job. He says this, Job has good reason to fear God. This is Satan's reply to the Lord. Job has good reason to fear you. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You've made him prosper in everything that he does. Look at how rich he is. But if he loses this, he'll curse you. So the accusation that Satan has made against God is that there's a wall of protection. Well, you could take that in a negative, but I'm going to tell you that is a positive in my book. And that's what we need. We need a hedge of protection around our marriage. Otherwise, your marriage is not going to make it. So here's what we're going to tackle over the next 5 weeks. This is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on leadership. We're going to focus on the proper spiritual leadership in the home and why you as a man should be in spiritual leadership. Now, you're going to learn, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the disclaimer, that husbands and wives have an equality. People talk about that. Egalitarianism is what it's called. And there is an equality. Yet by design, the protocol of authority for the husband is to protect, provide, promote, and empower his family, his wife specifically. Each spouse brings a complementary design to their marriage. So there are aspects that Kay brings to me that, frankly, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have. There are aspects about me that I add to Kay that if it were not for marriage, she wouldn't have. So there's a weakness for me. God said it's not good for man to be alone. There's a weakness for me, but there's also a weakness for her in that there's no spiritual covering. And even Paul talked about a woman having her head covered in the role of authority, even so that for the sake of the angels knowing, so spiritual beings know that this woman is covered, either by her father and by then her husband. You know, when I walked my oldest daughter down to get married, and I'm holding her, escorting her, and my friend says to me, who gives this woman to be married to this man? When I said her mother and I do, I felt a tangible shift, a transfer of authority from me to her husband. Now she is under his protection, his promotion, his empowerment, his provision. Are you with me? So we're going to talk about spiritual leadership, and it's going to take a lot to get all that out. The second thing we're going to talk about is communication. Husbands and wives have different ways to communicate, different styles. And here's what happens. We consider something different as wrong, but it's not wrong. It's different for a reason. That's why the woman is different from the man, is because she is the perfect complementary design to the man. Likewise, the man is the perfect complementary design for the woman. In the same way, communication. There's insight, there's intuition, there's discernment, there's a wisdom that Kay brings to the relationship. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have it in the same way. It's the same way for me to her. And what we have to do is learn how to communicate. It's important for husbands to learn how to communicate effectively with their wives so that we can build strong and healthy relationships. And I'm going to talk about how to give faith to follow, how to give your wife faith to follow you, how to be a spiritual leader to give your wife faith to follow. So one will lead into two, which is communication. Then we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about, it's a major stress in this life. It always has been, guys. And to be honest with you, it's so much easier nowadays because we can use currency for an exchange of goods and services. A few hundred years ago, it took a full day of work just to make a meal. It took days of effort to do the laundry. I really like and enjoy watching some cowboys out in the West. They have some YouTube channels, and the way that they live is romanticized. That you wake up in the morning, you go saddle your horse, you go out and check on the cattle, and you move the cattle, you take care of this, you take care of that. It is romanticized. You know what it is? It is a lot of work, right? So we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about you being an entrepreneur and providing financial goals and expectations. And I want to talk about financial celebrations that you need to bring to the table. Are you getting anything out of this tonight? Number 4, we're going to talk about what traps up so many, and that's sex. Sex is an important part of a healthy relationship, but there again, it can also be, just like money, it can be a source of strife. It can be a source of stress. And husbands and wives need to be able to communicate, building on communication. We need to communicate what our needs, our desires, in order to keep our bed holy, to do what is right. That is, sex is created by God, and so I'm going to dig into that, and so that we can be men who are biblical. We have authenticity, integrity in that realm as well. And then we're going to talk about children. Of course, children can be a great source of joy, but they can also be an incredible source of stress. And raising them, their needs, each child having a special need of that you're going to work on to develop a full functioning adult, and how you and your wife are a team to do that. I'm amazed at my adult children, knowing where they come from, knowing how we raise them, and knowing where they're at in the stages of life that they're at, and thanking God that He helped us along the way. Are you getting this? And so we're going to talk about husbands and wives working together so you can share the responsibilities of raising your children in order. Someone said, if you spoil your children, you will raise your grandchildren. If you raise your children, you'll be able to spoil your grandchildren. And that's so true. That's so true. I have so many friends who have really lost their, they really kind of lost their life, their lifestyle, their seasoned life era of life has been disrupted simply because they're having to focus so much attention on raising their grandchildren, because their children have been gone through difficulties and so forth, and I pray for them regularly, constantly. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in this series. That's how we're going to tackle these things, and I know it's a big subject. So we're going to lay some groundwork tonight. The deception of the enemy is a master weapon. And what he wants to do is he wants to divide. Deception divides, agreement attracts. Write that down. Deception divides, agreement attracts. So tonight, I want you to look at Matthew chapter 18, verse 19. Matthew chapter 18, verse 19. Now, I understand, and this is what happened after the last series. I really felt strongly that I needed to plow this out, and I needed to take a whole series on this. And so with that in mind, that's where this was birthed. And so I'm going to lay some groundwork here. Matthew chapter 18, verse 19. If two of you agree on earth concerning anything you ask, my Father in heaven will do it for you. If two of you agree on earth concerning anything you ask, my Father in heaven will do it for you. Satan hates marriage because it is built on the power of agreement. Marriage is built on the power of agreement. Marriage is the consummation of God's first word spoken over mankind, which is to be fruitful and increase. So when a husband and a wife share vows, they are doing so unto the God who instituted marriage, created male and female, and marriage is only between the male and the female. There are same-sex partnerships that have been legalized in our culture, but that does not make it marriage. Marriage is a spiritual, ordained institution between a male and a female. Now, Satan understands that the consummation of the male and the female is what will produce or fulfill the first words that God has ever spoken over mankind. Now, first words matter. If you're going to, first words matter in that what you say first gives original intent. And so what God says first over mankind, in Genesis chapter 1, is he blessed them. Aren't you glad that the first words that God spoke over man is to be a blessing? So he blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase. So these first words matter, and the enemy wants to disrupt these first words. And I've talked about this a lot, but this is so fundamental that I have to repeat it. I have to get it down into your understanding, because Satan wants to destroy marriage, and he's going to do that primarily through his art of war, which is deception. Listen, if Satan had a better weapon, he would go to it. If Satan had a better, like if you've got a pistol, that's a good weapon for certain things. But then you may have a rifle that is a better weapon for hunting. But you may have a F-16 that's a better weapon for warfare. You get the point. If Satan had a better weapon, because he's going to bring everything that he has against you. And if he had a better weapon, he would use it. And his scheme primarily is the art of war for him is deception. And it works masterfully. And we're not ignorant of his schemes. We know that he wants to cause a crisis, he wants to bring confusion, and he wants to create a civil war in marriage. Here's the problem. Most men are so passive in their marriage that they are thinking that it should just evolve into bliss. That they're just the fact that you got married, that you went through the courting process, you went through the engagement, you got her to the altar, you got the covenant, you consummated the marriage, and now you want to coast for 50 years and think that you're going to have a good marriage, and it's not going to happen, my friend. You've got to stay engaged, and you've got to stay actively pursuing a relationship. And you've got to realize that you are in a real battle. And let me also say this, Satan would not be battling you if he did not fear what a godly marriage could produce. The reason that he is after you so much is because he hates the idea of what a godly marriage in your life would produce. I love what... I love the explanation that God says about Abraham. why he selected him. Genesis 18:18. He says, I selected him because I singled him out. And here's why. I know that he will direct his household and his children's household and his children's children in order to keep the way of the Lord, so that all of the promises that I made to him will be fulfilled. So God singled out Abraham because he understood. Abraham had something about him. He understood that God's word over him was so vital that it would give him to intentional direction, but not just for his generation, but his following generations after him. And that is the ultimate goal for you and me, to be real men of faith, believing for something that will require longer than our own lifetime to achieve. We want to have intentional direction in our life. We want to walk in such a way. We want to walk in faith. We want to walk in integrity. We want to walk in confidence in our marriage, that we know, as our purpose is to be a husband and a father, we don't have time for trivial pursuits. Are you getting this? So this series, guys, is going to be, you can understand, this is going to be a real challenge for me, because it's spiritual warfare from day one. I've felt it from the moment I said I'm going to do this series. I felt a barrage, attacks in every way, attacks. And I'm not a novice in this. I get it. Attacks. I get it. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm picking on. So I need your prayers as we go forward in this series. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to be distracted from this series. This is one of those series I'm going to make sure is available on our Champion You platform, because this series has the ability to literally save marriages. So pray with me about it. I'm going to focus on it. Hey, I'm going to be at Evangel Word Prayer Center this weekend, and I'm really excited about being with Paul Woods and Dr. Bob Rogers. It's going to be a wonderful, incredible weekend. I'm still praising God for our weekend at Stillwater Cowboy Church, and then the week before that, Compassion City Church in Albertville, Alabama, and Stillwater Cowboy Churches in Grand Junction, Colorado. And then this weekend at Evangel in Louisville, Kentucky. So pray with me. God bless you. I love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.